Hello everyone. So in the last session we studied about the characteristic features and defining properties of living organism, and meanwhile with that we also studied about the some characters of non-living organisms also, and also we compared with both living and non-living. Yesterday I just concluded that topic, right? But today I'll go in detail how the organisms grow, how the organisms reproduce, and in which organisms metabolism takes place, in which organisms means in the living organism cell how metabolism takes place, and what about the consciousness in sense how the organisms responds to stimuli. So we'll have a different form of examples. By giving those examples, by drawing the diagrams, we'll come to know the different characteristic features and also the defining properties of living organism. So yesterday by taking the yesterday's properties like growth and reproduction and metabolism, and one more is response to stimuli or consciousness, whatever you can take. So these are the four main properties I wrote yesterday. So as I told you, we'll have a detailed account on the growth, whether to add this property in the living organism or not. What shall I do? According to yesterday's class, we should not add this property to the living organism. Why so? Because growth takes place in non-living organisms also, right? So before that, we'll have living organisms, how different forms of living organisms grow. Now coming to the, as I told you, I'll go in detail, right? So if we see different organisms like uni or multi or plants or animals, how they grow and what is the meaning of grow. Okay, so growth is nothing but increase in mass and increase in number. So it has a twin characteristic, as we can say, increase in mass and increase in number together comes under the property known as growth. So if an organism is increasing number, or if the organism is increasing mass, that organism, we can conclude that organism is growing. Okay, so now coming to the unicellular organism like bacteria or amoeba or chlamydomonas, all these are unicellular organism. How they are reproducing? They are reproducing by means of cell division. How they are growing? We are not in the reproduction. We are in the growth, right? How they are growing? They are growing by means of dividing their cell. And then how the plants are growing? The plants grow throughout their lifespan. If a plant is if the plant age is approximately 500 years or 20 years or 8 years, throughout that lifespan, throughout 100 years, the plant grow, right? But visually we cannot say. To some extent the plant will not grow, right? if we see in the physical appearance, the plant remains constant. In the last year, before last year, or 3 years back, if we are seeing one tree or one plant, to some extent it will grow. No, to some extent means only on 5 meter or 10 meter distance, if it is growing, means that is considered as growth. And not only by means of physical appearance, if the plant is growing, means if that only considered as the method of, or the means of development. No, in plants the branches, the leaves fall off, right? So in that place or in the succeeding place, the new branch arises. It means what? Directly or indirectly, we can say the plant is growing. A plant fell down to the earth or on the earth. We can say the plant is dead, and dead organism do not grow. So with this concept, we can conclude like plant grow throughout their lifespan. Okay. One more is, how about the animals? Will they grow? So till 18 years, the animals like human beings, human body or humans, they like in height wise they will grow 18 or 21 years age. After 21, after 18 years, they stop growing. Stop growing means they will become fat, but they won't increase their length or they won't increase their height. Okay, so we can say here the animals grow up to certain age. Okay, up to certain age they will grow. After that they stop growing. And then how about multicellular organisms? Multicellular organisms, they also grow by means of cell division. So with this we can refer the growth is in nothing but increase in mass or increase in number of a body. It refers to growth. Let me write here, increase in mass of body or increase in number refers to growth. It is the definition of growth. Okay, so we have come across the examples like unicellular organisms and plants. Let me write here, they grow, plants grow throughout their lifespan, and animals grow up to certain age. Multicellular cells also grow by means of cell division, like this. Now what about, so this is all about the living organism growth. What about the non-living organism? As I explained yesterday, non-living organisms like sand stones, like mountains or some rock surfaces, they also grow. They also increase their mass. Number of content will increase. So we can see this character, we are observing this character in non-living organisms also. That's why we cannot put this property in the living organism defining property. So that is a detailed account on the growth. One thing here you have to observe, in a living organism the growth occur inside the cell or inside the body. So from the insides, from the internal structure, from the internal part, the organisms growth, not from the outside surfaces. But in the non-living organisms, by deposition of some particles, some debris and all, the non-living organisms increase their mass. So finally, what I want to tell here, growth is not a defining property of living organism. So with this, we will move on to the next concept. Next concept in sense, next defining property, that is reproduction. The reproduction, it is nothing but, let me start with the definition of reproduction. In multicellular organisms, I must tell here, in multicellular organisms, the production of progeny possesses, I'll explain, okay. Let me complete this definition, later I'll explain. Progeny possesses few or more similar characters of their parents. It means what? One organism is reproducing, in sense it is giving rise to a new young one from its body, right? So this organism is considered as a progeny of its parent. Now few or more similar characters, like the characters may be in the size or shape or the physical appearance, everything will match. Few or more physical characters will match to its parent. So this criteria or to this interconnection between parent or progeny, we can call it as reproduction. The parent is going to reproduce one more offspring, one more progeny. The phenomena is known as reproduction. Now we call this it is taking place in the multicellular organism. How about unicellular organism or fragmented organisms? The unicellular organisms, again I'll come back to the E. coli bacteria. So the E. coli bacteria, the cell division takes place in the E. coli bacteria. It is not like producing some spores or some mycelium or some protonema or some egg shape type structures. Through that new organisms will occur. So unicellular organism, they directly undergo cell division and it produces two new offsprings from its parent itself. If you are looking at me, if my body cut into two parts, considering I am going to give rise to to new body. It will not possible, right? But it is possible in unicellular organism. That's why I started by taking the word multicellular organism. So let me write some more examples here, like fungi. Fungi, it reproduces asexually by developing some spores in it through the sporangiophores. Just think, we are learning the structure of fungi. Consider, this is the stalk and this is the sporangiophore or sporangium. Inside to that, number of spores are present. After the maturation of sporangia, it will dehisce and release number of spores, okay. And if that spore, the spore which is coming from the sporangium, a container of spore, okay. So that spore falls on the suitable substratum, suitable media. There also it will produce a new body of fungi, okay. So this is how the fungi produces spores. The production of spores is asexual reproduction without involving any male gamete and all. If it is undergoing division and it forms a special structure like a sporangium and sporangiophore, and inside to that the sporangium, if it is releasing spores are spherical structures, nothing, it is not that much difficult, okay. If this spore falling on the suitable substratum, that substratum or that spore become a new parent body or fungi body, okay. And what about the algae, filamentous algae? Filamentous algae in sense, let me write the Spirogyra. The filamentous algae, here one unique feature is there. If this filament got broken, if it cut in between, or if the filament gets separate from the body, what will happen? It is very much simple. This cut part regenerate into new body, and this will gain new the lost fragment. It means it has lost a fragment, right? This fragment will regenerate, or it will produce a new fragment. The cut part, again it will form a new algae body, okay. So this is only one method of telling the reproduction. It is nothing but the what is that, the type of reproduction is fragmentation. Accidentally, if any accident occurs to this body, accidentally if the fragment gets separate, it will not in the loss. Again this lost part gains new cell body which is similar to the parent body. So that is also seen in the filamentous algae. And a few more examples I would like to give here. One is protonema of mosses. Protonema of mosses in sense, mosses are non-vascular plants. Non-vascular plants in sense, the plants do not have the vascular tissues. Vascular tissues in sense xylem and phloem. Alright. So, the plants which do not have this type of tissues are known as non-vascular plants like bryophytes. So, the bryophytes, one of the method of reproduction is formation of protonema. When the mosses liberates or releases the spores from, or the spores, consider a spore. It dropped in, if it is in the substratum. Just think here a moist area is present, onto that the spore is fall off. Okay, this spore, what it will initially generate, what it initially produce, if it directly give rise to a plant or any special features are produced from this spore. So, through the spore, the unicellular in sense like single stranded like this, structure will form. So, what is this? This is nothing but the protonema of mosses. Instead of formation of root, it will synthesize, it will produce the rhizoids. Those rhizoids held firmly to the substratum. Though these are the single cellular strands you can call. So, these strands are of only a single cell. The cells are little bit lengthy, but this is one cell, one more cell, one more cell, one more cell. Like this, number of cells are present. So, that structure is known as protonema of mosses. How it further develops? Further, it forms the axillary buds, and through the axillary buds, the leaf arises, and that becomes a plant body of moss. So, this is how, this is also a mode of reproduction. Now, coming to the yeast and Hydra, they both reproduces by means of budding. Budding means what? Budding is very much simple. If you have seen the structure of yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the scientific name of yeast, consider we are having yeast on the board. How it reproduces? Whether it is going to cross with one more yeast, one more male yeast? No, rather than it form a small spore like body on the surface of the on surface of the body. Earlier to that, before formation of the circular body, the nucleus divides before forming this. Previously or primarily, the nucleus divide, and this nucleus goes to the extreme end, and the cell wall forms. The cell protrude itself. It means the cell will form a spherical structure. Few more cells, cells divide and form a spherical structure on the surface of this parent body, resulting into formation of a small young yeast. It is nothing but formation of budding. This, after the formation of budding, after maturation, not complete maturation. After to some extent, the body, after development of this bud, which matches to its parent body, which is matching to the yeast body, it will get separate. After some extent, the budding or this bud, a small circular yeast cell gets separate or detach from the parent body. So this mode of reproduction is known as budding. So this is one example of yeast. Okay, but if we take up one more example known as Hydra. Hydra, a long structure, a slender structure, and onto that tentacles are present, and at the central position mouth is present. So this Hydra is marine form. And how it reproduces? Asexually, it reproduces by forming a bud like this. A small bud will form at specific regions. Through that, a small structure will form which will be similar to the parent body. And then to some extent, after growing to some extent, not a complete maturity it attains by attaching to the parent body itself. To some extent, after growing to some extent, it will get detached from the parent body and it fall off on the substratum itself. Here it will be substratum. Okay, so when it fall onto the substratum of on the substratum, there it start developing. So we can conclude here, like the Hydra or the yeast, they are reproducing a new progeny by forming a bud. And then how about planaria? Planaria is a flatworm which looks like, how it looks? So this is how it looks. As I told you, the fragment organism gets separate. If it gets separated by the fragment, the lost fragment will regenerate a new fragments. The same thing will happen in this planaria also. If accidentally, if the fragment gets separated from the plant, from this animal, this lost body will mature or will gain a new fragment, a new next subsequent body. And what about this part? The lost part again will regenerate into new planaria animal or new planaria organism. Okay, so this is how the reproduction takes place in different organisms. But yesterday we didn't describe all this, right? That's why I'm explaining all the organisms. And let me tell you some animals. Mule, as I gave one example, mule or sterile, man, and one more is worker bee. They do not reproduce. If they are not reproducing any organism, can we put this property under living organism? No, we cannot. That's why reproduction is a character of living organism, but reproduction is not a defining property of living organism. What is mule? Mule is a hybrid of male donkey and female horse. If they cross male donkey and female horse, the resulting animal is known as mule. It cannot further fertilize, it cannot further give rise to any new young one. What is the reason for that? Here you can see this is one species, and here we have one more species. So species by species the chromosome number differ. In some organisms we can see 28 chromosome or 140 chromosome or only 8 chromosome or 16 chromosome. Likewise, in donkey and horse we can see a different number of chromosome. Due to this difference, due to this even number of chromosome obtained in the new offspring, it is a little bit difficult to reproduce. One reason. One more is mule, by physical appearance it resembles to horse, but in muscle strength, muscle contraction, it is not like horse. Okay, so horse is a very strong or a very rigid animal. So you know what is the importance of horse, but we cannot find that much strength. Like these mules are used in many for the shifting of any goods and all. They used to utilize this animal in that purposes, but we cannot compare the mule to the horse. And then so that's all about the mule. Now coming to the sterile man. Sterile man means in some human being, that too in some man, the sperm count will be less or no. So in that cases, the man, if he fail to reproduce the male gametes like sperm, he will be called as a sterile man. The same case we can give to the females also, or to the women's also, if she has any kind of difficulties or complexities related to her reproductive system, or any formation of hormones, synthesis of hormones or formation of gametes, female gametes, that is egg, she will be known as a sterile woman. So in that case they cannot reproduce to a young one. And worker bees, they meant for working. Okay, they cannot reproduce further. So that's why we are not concluding the reproduction property under defining property of living organism. The next thing what we said is about the metabolism. The metabolism is nothing but the total sum of chemical reaction takes place inside the human body. It is known as metabolism. So the total sum of chemical reaction, in sense whatever the chemical reaction taking place inside the cell, number of chemical reactions takes place, not only human body but all the living organism, like the plant cell, the animal cell, the multicellular organisms, the chemical reaction takes place. So the result of the chemical reaction, the cell organize or the cell organization takes place. But yesterday I told metabolism, this is the only process or the only property which we can define under living organism, right? Yes, I was correct. The metabolism, whatever the chemical reaction takes place inside the human body, we cannot do the same thing, the same chemical reaction in vitro condition. A number of chemicals or reactions we can conduct under laboratory condition or in the chemistry lab, but like this type of chemical reaction we cannot conduct. Okay, so maybe in the chemistry lab you are going to conduct in some exothermic or endothermic reactions, but it will not as the metabolism type of reaction. So what we have to conclude? We have to conclude the metabolism is the only property, is the defining property of living organism. The next is consciousness or respond to stimuli. Yesterday I explained the consciousness or response to stimuli is not a defining property of living organism, but here I just want to correct myself. The consciousness or response to stimuli, it comes under defining property, but what I gave one example by taking a coma patient. In the coma patient, the metabolism will take place inside his body. If we are injecting, if the doctors are injecting any kind of some injections or some drugs or medicines, slowly, gradually, after few years, maybe he will recover. If they put some oxygen or if they have fixed any circulatory system or any dialysis instrument to his body, but somewhat to some extent his body is responding to those medicines. It means what? If he cannot make out who is going around us, if maybe he is not in the conscious, maybe he cannot respond to the stimuli, but inside to his body, inside the human body, inside in his body, the cells, whatever the cells are present, whatever the different type of reactions are present. Just before this we talked about the metabolism, right? So those metabolisms are taking place inside his body. That's why we can add this property under living organism. Okay, make it correct. If you have wrote the consciousness or response to stimuli, it cannot refer to as defining property of living organism. Make it correct. It can comes under, it can refer a defining property of living organism. So different organisms respond to stimuli, like plants, they respond to temperature, light and wind, and number of organisms, number of animals, they maybe not maybe, they response to stimuli, they have the consciousness. So all these, by taking all these explanation, the conclusion is the consciousness is the property, defining property comes under the living organism. But the non-living organisms, they do not have any consciousness or any, they do not respond to any stimulus. Okay. So with this we have completed the first concept, that is, what is that? The first concept is what is living. Okay, what is living means the living organism, if they are responding to the stimulus, if they are if the metabolism is taking place inside their body, those organisms may be called it as the living organism. But if we start telling the characters of all living organism, the living organism characters are they grow, they develop, they regulate, they reproduce. All these are the characters of living organism. But defining properties are, as I said just now. And the next is the diversity in living world. So, diversity in living world. If you look around, just look around, look outside the window. What do you find? What you find? You find vehicles are moving, or we should not go to any mechanical means or machines. We just try to see the flora or the plants, the animals, insects, and what is that, environment or the moisture content. All these are present. The abiotic components are also present, biotic components are also present. Abiotic in sense light, wind, temperature, soil, and biotic components are like insects, animals, plants, number of human beings. So these are the biotic components. If we take the example, like not example, if we take that concept, what it refers, it is nothing but biodiversity. The biodiversity, this is the concept where the plant or organism, the number and the plant or the animals or the organisms, number of plants, number of animals are present on the earth. Yes, my dear students, if we start counting the species, number of millions of species are present. Number of plant species are also present, number of animal species are also present, number of microbe world is present. So together what we have written already here, what we have written, but the biodiversity. So the total number and type, number it refers to, the biodiversity refers to the number and types of organisms present on the earth. The total number of different organisms, different number of organisms, and the total number of different types of organisms which is present in the world or on the earth is referred to biodiversity. Okay, so the biodiversity, like if we start telling the names of all those species, the name will differ from one place to other place, from one religious to other religious. If we take one example, like for the dog, in English we used to call it as dog. In Kannada and in Hindi or in other languages or in Tamil or Telugu or Malayali, you know the better names of the same species. The species is only one, but the different names are present to that species. We will have much confusion by calling that species. We will be facing, like if we here we can call that species as a dog, but if we go to some far place or some Arctic region or anywhere else, don't imagine only ma'am you don't find any dogs in Arctic region, just imagine somewhere else. Okay, if they know the English, if you tell the dog is going, they'll come to know. If they do not the English language, they'll have confusion. Let me one example, I'll tell you the situation. I'll show the species and I'll tell you. If the answer is like that, no my dear students, what I'm going to tell you is the names are different differ from one place to other place. So that names are known as local names. Local names, the religious people, they have given that local name to that species. The species is, the example what we have given is dog. But to avoid all these confusion, we need a standard name to one organism which can call all over the world, which can call all over the world. So that naming or the specific name specifying the organism by a particular name is known as nomenclature. Nomenclature. Just write down the definition of nomenclature. Here there is a need to standardize the organism, to standardize the naming of organism, to standardize the naming of organism such that the particular name will be known all over the world. So the process is known as nomenclature. Is this possible? Yes, the botany or zoology or this subject or this branch is going under this nomenclature itself. If I go to any other country, if I ask you or ask them to give, I need a cell of a dog, they'll get confused. If I ask him, I need a culture of any fungi, if I don't mention a particular standard name, they'll get confused. These are all the different scientific names of different species. You just go wherever you want. If you know the standardized name or the scientific name, you won't face any difficulty while doing the experiments and all. Okay, so I'll stop to this. I'll take up in the next session by continuing with the scientific names of different organisms, and I'll keep on telling you about the ICBN, ICZN and binomial nomenclature and Carolus lineages. We'll see in the next session. Thank you.